What's the matter with you? Yeah, take the scissors and run you down there and cut it off.
All these signs are Italian signs, you know that?
One more time, cheese and macaroni.
Okay, cheese.
Okay, look.
So, in those days I was a little disappointed, but of course as time passed, you know, you gained appreciation for the things that were important in this society. Just as when I was a little girl, I used to know a lady who was my babysitter, and I used to call her Miss L. I found out later in life it was Eleanor Roosevelt. So, you know, you do have appreciation for people once you get older and find out what they represent, not just to you, but represent to the world.
He has had a special meaning in my life in terms of being an artist and an activist. He has some deep Philadelphia connections. When you look at his ancestry, there are people in his family that are related to each major event in U.S. history, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to World Wars I and II. Each of those big events that make America, the U.S., what it is today. Paul Robeson's family or his work was touched by each of them. He was born on April 9th, 1898 in Princeton, New Jersey. And his father was basically itinerant, but he became part of the Presbyterian Church. And when he was about 4, his family moved from Princeton to Somerville, where his father was more or less part of the Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church. He became very excelled. His grandmother on his mother's side. His mother is Louisa Bastille. She died when he was only 4 years old. But her side of the family, her grandfather is Cyrus Bastille, who was a baker for George Washington. You know, Philadelphia is the original capital of the United States. The original White House was on Market Street, Market in what is now 6th Street. Well, Cyrus Bastille was a baker and made bread right here on Market Street and had that bread carried by horse carriage up to George Washington when he was fighting off the British loyalists. So Cyrus Bastille is Paul Robeson's great-grandfather. Later on, he would go on, when he was 8 years old, he had 2 very influential, he talks about his drama teacher, his English teacher, who encouraged him to do oratory. So he was really planning to go either be a football professional athlete or be a lawyer. And so he earned Phi Beta Kappa at Rutgers University. His father was also a student at Lincoln. So he saw from an early age, even when they moved to Princeton, Paul's older brother, the father was trying to get him into Princeton University, which was then presided by Woodrow Wilson. But because of racism, you know, wasn't accepted. So Paul understood very clearly from an early age that racism was a joy. As people from Philly will use that word, John being a problem, that he saw his father fight and he knew himself he had to overcome. He graduated from Rutgers in around 1919. By that time his father had passed, but he was valedictorian. And in his valedictorian speech he talked about what was happening in 1919, which was then troops returning from World War I, but also the huge, very serious racial tensions in the cities, where white workers and black workers were fighting for jobs. And his basic master's thesis, if you will, was saying that we all have to have a common vision and unite. This is going to be something that's going to follow him later in his life, the importance and the theme of racial reconciliation. When, you know, fast forward 30 years, he's going to be in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, accused of being a communist sympathizer. His life would take a huge change when he one day was going to work in the office under a lawyer, and the secretary who worked for the lawyer told him, "I don't take dictation from N-words." I'm saying N-words, but she said the N-word. And after he heard that, he just made up in his mind that he's not going to work in a profession where he can't represent as a lawyer his clients. So around that time, he was seeing a young woman who was in the Columbia Med School named Islanda Good. And she was his intellectual equal. Her mother worked for Marcus Garvey and Hubert Harrison in Harlem. So a lot of what made that relationship work between Islanda Good, who would become Islanda Robeson, and Paul Robeson, is their love and their anti-fascist, anti-racist work that both of them did before they even met each other. Fast forward, they're doing a revival, bless you, of Shuffle Along New York. I just found out, bless you, with Audra McDonald. That was Paul Robeson's first show that kind of blew him up. Because he was walking and one of his friends said, "They need a replacement, go fill in." And I think it was recently the Noble Blake, U.B. Blake and Noble Sissel, the writers of Shuffle Along, said Robeson was the ideal replacement because he could sing, he could act, he was a triple threat. The show toured in the States, but before then he was in a previous show called Taboo by Mary Hoyt Weiberg that really wanted him to the speech that silenced all other speeches, the speech that defined his life, and it's also the speech that defined his being blacklisted by the U.S. government and the music industry. In 1949, in April, he spoke in the Paris Peace Conference. This is after a series of lynchings he was very aware of. This is after Maceo Snipes was murdered for trying to vote in Georgia. This is after Angelo Herndon was a Georgia sharecropper who was imprisoned for trying to organize other farm workers. And the Jim Crow discrimination that he knew his father fought against when he tried to get his son to go to Princeton and Wilson refused. So all of that building up led him to give a speech where he basically says Negroes should not fight in a war against a country that has raised its citizens of color to a status higher than those here in the U.S. And the other country he was referring to in 49, for our history buffs here, is who was the U.S. fighting in 49? Russia, absolutely, Russia. His son, in fact, and Islanda's.
It keeps on rolling along. He don't plant potatoes. He don't plant the cotton. And that election is sort of forgotten by old man River. He just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with the pain. Tote that barge! Lift that bell! Just show a little grit and you'll land in jail. Heart keeps laughing instead of crying, and I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And old man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and rocked with the pain. Tote that barge! has no son, but those none he does.